Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone. Sawadee krap. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is after we get started, because we start each class with a meditation. I'll guide you guys in a meditation session first, and then I'll explain to you guys what we do as part of our class today. The teachings of the Buddha are here to guide you to a mental state referred to as enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings and others are completely eliminated from the mind. This comes through training of the mind. You can eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings. Oftentimes people think that the reason why you experience anger is because of other people. But in reality, it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. You can actually see this through the teachings of the Buddha. He teaches you in a way that you can independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And that's why you can actually eliminate them. Meditation is part of the training that the Buddha shared, but there's other parts as well. And that's why we share teachings beyond just meditation here. So if you'd like to join for meditation, this is an important part of moving the mind to enlightenment. But as I shared, there's other things you need besides just meditation. The way that I start with meditation is I start with some chanting to ease the mind into meditation. And we have the chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. I see many of you guys already have one, but if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students to remember his teachings. Everything he taught was oral. So they would come together every 2 weeks and they would recite his teachings orally. That's the origins of chanting within this tradition. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship or prayer or anything like that. There's nothing mystical or magical in the teachings of the Buddha. Even if you've been exposed to those kinds of things, that's not what the Buddha actually taught. He taught you to train your mind, cultivating wisdom of the mind and uprooting certain pollutions that he discovered in the mind. So today I use chanting as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was just used as a learning tool. So you can see that there's nothing mystical or magical with chanting. As I mentioned, it's not a rite or ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. If you read the English translations of these chants, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't even think the Buddha created these chants, because a Buddha wouldn't go around and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. This would be ego. This would be arrogance if someone did this. And by the time someone gets to enlightenment, they would have eliminated their ego. They're no longer putting themselves above other people and looking down on people. So the Buddha wouldn't have created these chants to convince his students to chant these to him. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all those other discontent feelings to this peaceful and joyful mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation and gratitude for this person too. So that's where I think that these chants actually came from, is his students, because they would have had a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for him, because not only during his lifetime, but long after his death, people have been getting to this enlightened mental state, and you can experience this for yourself. And having done so, you'll have an enormous amount of respect for the Buddha. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to be chanting these as we ease into meditation. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance to be essentially instructing you and guiding you and teaching you how to meditate while we're actually meditating. So you'll hear me guiding you for a period of time. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. We're just all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and everybody online will just all be meditating at the same time. Now, during that period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car going by, you might hear a dog barking, a bird chirping, something like this, or maybe someone here might sneeze or cough, right? This is normal. If you have a craving for permanent silence, when you're in meditation and you hear a sound, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed. It'll get frustrated or irritated because your mind's craving permanent silence, where you live in an impermanent world and you can't live in a world where it's permanently silent. It's just not possible because the world is impermanent. It's constantly changing. But if your mind's craving permanent silence, you'll experience annoyance or frustration or agitation or some other discontent feeling. So you can get rid of that craving, desire, attachment, that longing, yearning for silence, and then you'll notice that you can be quite peaceful. So when you hear a sound during meditation, just know that it's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. And this is the world working exactly the way the Buddha described, that things around you are constantly changing. They are impermanent. Then after that period of time of quietness where we're actually meditating, then we're going to come out of that with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught. And you would learn these 4 at different times because it's kind of like creating a tool belt for yourself in your journey to enlightenment. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And again, you would learn these at different times in your journey to enlightenment because your body can't be in the same position permanently. You're going to need these different positions at different times. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position, and then you can learn these other positions at any other time. But understand what I'm sharing with you about the seated position is just suggestions. It's just something for you to consider. There isn't any, right or wrong way to sit in meditation. It's finding whatever's comfortable for you. And there's many different options. So you might consider, if you're on the floor in a chair, just to sit comfortable however you like. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair, any of these other kinds of ways, you can sit however you're comfortable. But if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. That's sometimes popular. It'll help to make your seat more comfortable and soft. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you kind of like to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it'll impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and it allows the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. You could do this if you like, but again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up or just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you. The same thing's true for anybody who's sitting in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, in a wheelchair. You can sit however you're comfortable as well. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you're comfortable. It's nice if the upper body is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because this will keep the mind attentive and alert during your meditation, because you'd like to be actively training your mind. Meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. If your body was slouched like this, you'd have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. Or if you were real rigid, your mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation so that you can actively train it, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to ease us into the meditation with some chanting. You guys are welcome to join in. Then I'm going to come back in with some guidance from there. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Apivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามานุสรังปุโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, Whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนะมัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online who's joining us as well. This is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is one of the primary forms of training that the Buddha used in order to move his mind to enlightenment. As I was mentioning, there's other training that you would need to know as well, but this is an important part of one's practice. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is people think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. And this actually isn't true. If you study his original teachings and you see his actual words, you can see that he talks about gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It took him 6 years to actually get to enlightenment. So it's not going to be instantaneous. But this meditation is important because it's helping you to develop the wholesome qualities of mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration. So you can be focused and concentrated in your day-to-day life. What mindfulness is where you have awareness of your mind. You're aware of the thoughts and ideas and wholesome and unwholesome qualities that you have in your mind. The other thing that this meditation is doing is it's training your mind to eliminate what's called craving, desire, attachment. This is where the mind's holding on, wanting things to be a certain way. This is the underlying cause of what's producing your discontent feelings. When you experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, your mind is holding on to something. It's craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way. The mind is expecting things to be a certain way. And when you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But when you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are very painful for the mind to experience. Then there's feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. This is like shyness or uncomfortableness or dissatisfaction. This is all coming from the mind's craving, wanting things to be a certain way. The mind is longing, yearning, almost chasing after the objects of its affection. And again, if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy, it gets those pleasant feelings. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings. And now when those painful feelings are arising, the unenlightened mind, with its lack of wisdom, will truly believe that they're coming from something external. You'll firmly believe that it's your mom and dad that are making you angry, or your brothers and sisters, or your boss, or your coworkers, or your neighbors. And what the mind will do is it'll become unskillful. When those painful feelings are coming up, you'll tend to push people away, like your friends or family. Maybe you've pushed people away out of your life, thinking that this was going to solve your problem. But you can see that it doesn't solve the problem, because the mind still gets angry, still gets annoyed, still gets frustrated. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. The mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled. The mind thinks, if I can just steer this person into doing things my way, then I'll get those happy feelings that I want, those pleasant feelings. Or you might put your expectations on people, kind of trying to force them or pressure them, convince them to do things your way. So you might be doing this. People might be doing it to you too, where they're pushing you away, where they're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're putting their expectations on you and trying to control you and force you to do things their way. And as long as your mind is doing this, you'll never get to peace and harmony. You'll never get to harmonious relationships, because it's only a matter of time before you're around somebody who does things opposite of what you want them to do. Because it's only you that does things your way. But with the mind's ego, you'll think that your way is the right way and everybody else's way is the wrong way. And then when they do things opposite of you, that's where your anger will arise, and you'll push them away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or you'll put your expectations on people. And in this way, you can't actually live with all beings harmoniously. Because as I mentioned, it's only a matter of time before someone does things differently than what you expect. But the Buddha taught this better way of life, where you can train your mind to let go, and you can let go of having your mind experience these painful feelings. You can independently verify the teachings of the Buddha. Nothing he taught is based in belief. You shouldn't believe what I'm sharing with you here today, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You need to be able to independently verify what it is that the Buddha is teaching you. So you need to look in your life and be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, because that's what I'm sharing with you, that it's your mind's craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. It's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So maybe look at a recent situation where you've been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. Maybe it was this morning or yesterday or last week. You can look at that situation with these fresh eyes, because at that time you might have been trying to blame somebody else for the feelings that you were experiencing. That's very common for the mind to do. But look at that situation with this new wisdom. What was it that your mind was longing, yearning for? What was it that you were wanting and expecting? And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get it, you were sad or frustrated or having some other painful feeling. Maybe if you showed up to the airport and your flight was delayed, you might have been frustrated or angry or irritated. That's the mind craving permanence. The mind wants these planes to take off on time, but it's not possible for every single plane to take off on time. This is impermanence, and the world's full of impermanence. So there's going to be maybe a maintenance issue with the plane. Maybe there's going to be a crew issue. Maybe there's going to be a weather issue. But if your mind's craving permanence, when you show up to the airport and your flight's delayed or canceled, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed, and maybe you'll be angry at the airline, when it's not the airline company that's the problem here. What's causing that anger is the mind itself. It's craving permanence. Or maybe if you've had a boyfriend or girlfriend, when you guys were together, maybe you were so happy and excited, but when you guys broke up, You might have been angry or frustrated or annoyed. Maybe you were lonely or bored or missing this person. This is the mind craving permanence, wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality it's going to end. It's impermanent. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, you can see that this relationship was going to end. It was only a matter of time, because more likely than not, one of you would have died first. And even with death, if you've had like a grandparent die, or a parent, or a sibling, or a close friend, you might have felt sorrow or sad or grief or despair during that period of time. You're not a bad person for experiencing this. Every unenlightened being experiences this, where the mind is holding on to grandma and grandpa. And as long as they're alive, the mind's happy. But when they die, they experience anger, frustration, or sadness, or some other discontent feeling. Again, this is the mind craving permanence. You can see this even more clearly with some very simple examples. Like if you get really happy and excited when it's sunny outside, when it rains, you'll get frustrated, you'll get annoyed, right? And you can see there's no other person even involved here, right? So it's not other people causing you to be frustrated, it's the mind itself. Or if you look at your bank account and it's up here and you get really happy, but then it goes down here and you get frustrated or sad, you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, because there's no one else involved. All that's happened is change. That's all that's happened. It went from sunny to rain. It went from here to here. And all it is change. It's just impermanence, that everything around you is constantly changing. But the mind craves permanence in the unenlightened state. So this meditation, along with other teachings that the Buddha shares, trains your mind to let go, where you don't crave permanence, where you don't hold on to things, wanting them to be permanent. Because as long as your mind's doing that, you'll hold on to something, getting really happy that you got this thing, but then when it changes, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Like if you get a brand new car and you get really excited about this, but then you park it at a store and you go inside and you come out and there's a scratch on your car, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. It's not the scratch that's causing it. And it's not the person who scratched your car. It's the mind craving permanence, wanting this car to be permanently beautiful, when in reality, it's impossible for this car to be permanently beautiful. This paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. So you need to be able to have this breakthrough where you can see the truth for yourself, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. You can do this through looking at your own life. Now, I'm sure you've been in arguments where you've been adamantly trying to convince somebody that what they are doing are causing you to be angry, and they need to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to keep getting angry. I'm sure you've been in those situations, but you need to be able to see the truth, that maybe that person was doing something unwise, but that wasn't what was causing your mind to be angry or frustrated. You were craving permanence, wanting everybody to do things exactly the same way, when this is impossible because we live in an impermanent world. So as long as your mind craves this permanence and you don't understand that it's your own mind that's doing this and that it's causing its own discontent feelings, you'll continue to be angry and stressed and having anxiety for the rest of your life. So you need to be able to see the truth and have a breakthrough to be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, because then you can fix it. And that's what the teachings of the Buddha are for. He's going to show you how to train your mind to get to the point where it's completely peaceful and it's completely joyful, where you're not holding on to things really tight, chasing after them, but you're also not over here where you could care less about what's going on in your life either. You come to the middle where you can gradually work towards goals, objectives, or interest. So there's various programs here that help you to be able to gradually build your understanding, because there's certain beginning teachings that you need to learn in order to be able to understand and build a foundation and work towards improvement on the path to enlightenment. And there's different courses, programs, retreats that you can learn from. In fact, tomorrow, the group learning program, it's a very good program for that, where each Sunday and Wednesday I come together and help students to gradually learn the teachings. We actually use this first book of our book series as a foundational text. It's called Developing a Life Practice, the Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And each Sunday I go chapter by chapter, tomorrow I'm going to be in chapter 7, which is titled The 5 Precepts, a Householder's Guide to Daily Practice. This is where you're going to learn 5 impactful decisions that you can make either wisely or unwisely, and it'll produce either wholesome results or unwholesome results for you. If you've learned that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, the Buddha actually never taught this, that these are rudimentary translations that people are using, that this sounds like black and white. It sounds like rules and commandments. And the Buddha didn't teach that way. He used very illuminating language, very clear, very concise, and very precise. So tomorrow I'm going to be using his original words so you can see what did he actually teach on this important topic. And then I'm going to relate it to common decisions that you make in your day-to-day life so you can see how to apply these 5 precepts in your day-to-day life. And then there's other programs and courses and retreats that I share that are going to help you to gradually build up your practice. And by the way, you can get this first book for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here, but just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon if you like, because that would be the best place to start, is in that first book. And that's going to help you to gradually build up your understanding of the path to enlightenment and what the Buddha taught in a way that you don't believe his teachings. You learn them, examine them, investigate them. You reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life, transforming your mind. And that's where you see real improvement, because his teachings aren't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. His teachings are about getting to a wonderful life now, in this life. And you can see that occurring, that as you're training your mind, you'll see your relationships are improving, your professional careers are improving. You'll see that the condition of your mind's improving, where there's more peace and more joy coming into your mind. So his teachings are helping you to get to a better and better life now, in this life. And you'll be able to see that that's occurring. Then we have a program like today, which is called the Pali Canon and English Study Group. What this is the Pali Canon is the original source teachings of the Buddha. There's 45 volumes of books that are about this thick. And what we've done in our book series, we have 13 books, is we've consolidated it to a point where you can actually approach it and understand it and start to gain the benefits of having studied the Buddha's original words. So what we do is we study volumes 2 through 13 in this particular program. And it takes us about a year and a half to gradually work our way through the entire program and all the book series. Now we're in volume 11, studying chapters 91 through 100. And what we do is we do it as more as a study group. I do it here in the morning, and I also do it at home as well. In the evening, I do the same class from home, and I live stream it so that students, no matter what time zone you're in, you have a class to be able to join. Right now we're in volume 11, like I mentioned. The volume 11 is titled The Realms of Existence. This is volume 11 for a reason, because normally students have already developed the understanding of the path to enlightenment long before they get here. This is where the Buddha is teaching about the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. These are all things that you can actually independently verify. Right now, you might not have the wisdom of understanding how to verify the cycle of rebirth, because the Buddha taught that we're continually being reborn over and over and over again until you escape that by getting to enlightenment. And he also taught these 5 realms of hell, animal realm, afflicted spirits, which are like ghosts, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. You can actually independently verify this. Again, you might not have that wisdom of how to do that right now, but in this book, you can actually learn that. But this isn't a book that people usually start from the very beginning. It's volume 11 for a reason, because usually students are developing their understanding of all the other teachings and training their mind and experiencing all kinds of improvements before they ever get to this particular volume. But the way that we do this particular program is I invite students here at the temple, or anybody who's in Zoom, to be able to read a chapter from our book. So this particular chapter is chapter 91. And these are the original words of the Buddha. And you can see here that we have about a page worth of his words. This is an excerpt from the Pali Canon, those 45 volumes of books. And after someone reads the chapter, then I will share some teachings on that to help you guys to understand how to integrate this into your life and get benefit out of it. Then I'll open up to any questions that you guys have. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online, you can ask questions. So if somebody would like to volunteer to read this here at the temple, we have microphones here that if you guys could just come get a microphone, press the gray button, you'll see the lights come on, and then you hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. And if you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. So if you could use a microphone, that'd be great. And you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share it with them. And then if you're not using it, if you could just turn it off, that'll help us so that we don't get feedback through the speakers. And anybody who's in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and unmute your microphone, and then you can read or ask questions that way. And then for anyone who's in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section, or again in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically. And if you guys could use the microphones for questions, that would be great. So I'll show you guys how this works. I think, Phyllis, you were interested in volunteering to read this, so go for it.
Fruits from residing in formless perceptions and considering impermanence. Here, with the complete overcoming of perceptions of forms, with the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, perceiving space as infinite, a monk enters and resides in the base of the infinity of space. He considers whatever objects exist there related to feeling, perception, volitional formations, choices, decisions, and consciousness as impermanent, discontentedness, an illness, a boil, a dart, misery, affliction, alien, disintegrating, empty, and non-self. He turns his mind away from those objects and directs it to the deathless element, enlightenment, thus, this is peaceful, this is superb. That is the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all material gain, the destruction of craving, freedom from strong feelings, elimination, nibbana, enlightenment. If he is firm in this, he attains the destruction of all taints, fetters. But if he does not attain the destruction of the taints because of that craving for the teachings, because of that excitement in the teachings, then with the complete destruction of the 5 lower fetters, he becomes one of spontaneous birth, due to attain final nibbana, final enlightenment, there without ever returning from that world. Just as an archer or an archer's apprentice undergoes training on a straw man or a heap of clay, and then at a later time becomes a long-distance shooter, a sharp shooter, one who splits a great body, in reference to the base of infinite consciousness and the base of nothingness, identical teachings to the base of infinite space were spoken. The cases of the first jhana, the second jhana, the third jhana, and the fourth jhana were spoken from the difference is to see impermanence in the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, choices, decisions, and consciousness.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So this is a teaching that an individual would need to know other teachings to be able to really understand this. That's why it's in volume 11, right? But I'll kind of break this down for you and give you guys some understanding of how this all connects together. Because if you haven't studied these other teachings, you wouldn't necessarily be able to gain benefit from just reading this as it is. But for someone who's studied the other teachings of the Buddha, they would be able to understand exactly what the Buddha is talking about here. So here's what he's saying. He's saying with the complete overcoming of perceptions, what perception is like a view or opinion that the mind has. And it may or may not even be true. We might call this an assumption. And what the mind tends to do in the unenlightened state is it'll cling to its perceptions. You'll kind of go into a certain situation, you'll form a perception about people or the situation, and you'll cling to that perception. So I'll give you guys an example of this. If you were training to be a police officer, they train you not to cling to your perceptions because you're making life or death decisions. And if you cling to your perceptions, you could actually make an unwise decision based in that perception. If you make a decision based in a perception and it's a false truth, it's not actually real, it's an assumption, you could actually end up in a big trouble, not only as a police officer, but in your day-to-day life as well. So for example, if I was a police officer and I was dispatched to a convenience store and I was told that there's a robbery going on in this convenience store and someone has a gun and someone's being robbed of their money. Well, if I race over there to that convenience store and I sling open the door to the front of the convenience store, maybe there's someone in a black hoodie with a gun standing over top of somebody that's been shot, and somebody laying on the floor is shot and they're bleeding out on the floor. Well, if I cling to my perception and I think this is the person who's doing the robbing, and I just whip out my gun and start shooting this person standing over the dead body or the person who's injured, I could have actually just killed the cashier, right? Because the cashier could have maneuvered that gun out of the robber's hand and they might have shot the robber, and the robber might actually be on the floor. So that's why police officers are trained to go into that environment understanding they know nothing about what's going on, and they're going to pull out their gun and they're going to say, "Police, police, put down your gun." And if you're the person who's the cashier and you turn and you see that it's the police, oh, you'll happily put the gun down because thank goodness I've got help here to help me. Whereas if you're the actual robber and you hear police, 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 you might actually turn with the gun and point it to the police officer. And that's where the police officer is then trained to shoot, right? So you're trained as a police officer not to cling to your perceptions, but you need to train that way yourself, right? Because you might have told your child, for example, "Hey, I need you to clean your room. Clean your room. Mom or dad's going to be back in an hour and I'll see you when I come back," right? And now you leave and then they're supposed to be in their room cleaning, and you come back and you walk into their room and now there's like books all over the floor. And if you cling to your perception that your child hasn't cleaned the room, you might start being bitter and angry and hostile because you're craving for them to do things your way. And now when you walk in, you see that they have their books all over the floor, and you might be clinging to the perception that they didn't clean the room. Whereas if you understand that the unenlightened mind does this, you'll actually walk into the room and you'll say, "Hey, what happened? I thought you were going to clean your room," right? You'll start asking questions because you're like that police officer showing up without any idea of what's going on in this room because you haven't been there for the last hour. And you say, "Hey, I thought you were going to clean your room." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I did. I cleaned everything. About 30 seconds before you walked in, I bumped into my bookshelf and the books flew all over the floor, and I'm just getting ready to pick them up now." "Oh, okay, I understand. Sweet. Well, take care of what you need to take care of. Do you need help? I'll help you." Right? So now you can just have a wonderful conversation because you're not clinging to your perception of what may or may not be going on in the situation. So the Buddha teaches you not to cling to your perceptions. Don't assume that you know what's going on in any given situation, to ask questions. And by asking questions, then you can know the truth. And you would like to do that in all situations in your life, whether it's work life or personal life. You'd like to ask questions and don't assume that you know what's going on in any given situation. So the Buddha teaches you to do that kind of thing. And he says here that whatever object exists there related to feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, which are choices and decisions, and then the consciousness, which is the mind itself, he's saying this is impermanent. Right? You need to understand that things are impermanent around you because your mind's going to keep craving permanence. As long as you lack the wisdom of the universal truth of impermanence, that things are constantly changing, you'll crave permanence. So if you say to your child, "Hey, I need you to clean your room," well, when you leave and come back, if you're craving them to listen to you, if you're craving for them to do things your way and they don't do it your way, you'll be angry, you'll be frustrated, right? So you like to understand impermanence, and then that is going to lead to discontentedness, these conditioned feelings. And then the Buddha says it's important to be able to see that as like an illness, that the mind is craving this permanence essentially. And then ultimately he gets to this point where he talks about non-self, which we can talk about. If you guys have questions about that, just let me know. And then he says, okay, he turns his mind away from those objects and directs it to the deathless. What he's saying is you turn your mind away from this craving for permanence, that you understand that the world is impermanent and not continuing to crave permanence, that you turn your mind towards enlightenment, which is getting towards this peaceful and joyful mental state, which is a permanent mental state. When you attain this enlightened mental state, it's physically impossible for you to ever experience anger or frustration or any of those other discontent feelings like stress or anxiety or fear or guilt or shame or anything else. And that's why the Buddha is saying this is peaceful. This is superb. That is the stilling of all activities, the letting go of material gain, where you're not constantly chasing material gain. You're going to need a certain amount of income. You're going to need a certain amount of supplies to sustain your life. But it's when you chase and chase and chase, and you're trying to form your inner feelings based on what you have and what you don't have, that your mind will experience discontentedness. So if you think happiness is going to come through material wealth, that will never lead to happiness. Because if everyone who was rich was happy, nobody that was rich would ever commit suicide. Right? This is one of the things that we're taught, that if you chase money and you get a lot of money, you will then be happy. This isn't true, because if that was true, rich people would never commit suicide. But you can see that rich people do kill themselves because they're not happy, some of them, right? They have painful feelings and they're trying to escape those painful feelings. So the Buddha isn't teaching you that, you shouldn't pursue income or wealth or anything like that. He teaches you not to form your inner feelings based on it. Because if you get really happy when your money's up here, then when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. This is why somebody who has had like a lot of fame and they became very famous at a certain point in their life, they might get really excited about that. And that maybe is happening for several years. But then when their fame drops off and they're not famous anymore, they experience a lot of painful feelings. And this is where sometimes people that are celebrities or people who are famous at one time, when their fame drops off, they end up killing themselves because they're having all these painful feelings because they allowed their mind to get so excited when they were famous and people knew them really well. But then when their fame dropped off, it was very painful for them because their mind wasn't getting what it wanted anymore, which was that attention and that fame from the outside world. So the Buddha teaches you to let go of the material gain, not letting go of the need for material gain, but the chasing and chasing and chasing, where the mind is like, oh, I know what I need. If I just get a job making $50,000 a year, that would be perfect. I just want $50,000 a year. Everything will be great. So you'll work really hard for that and you'll get your $50,000 a year and you'll be really happy and excited. But within a matter of about 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, you'll be frustrated again. It's not enough money. You want more. You want 60, 70, 80,000. And now you'll chase that for a while and you might get it. And then you'll be happy for a period of time, but that'll wear off too. And then you'll just want more and more and more, right? This is like an unquenchable thirst that the mind has, that it chases after material gain. So the Buddha teaches you that it's unwise to do that, that you work towards your goals, objectives, or interests, acquiring the things that you need, but not allowing the mind to constantly crave and crave and crave this material gain. That's why he says the destruction of craving. That's that longing, yearning, and chasing after things. He says this is going to lead to the freedom from strong feelings. That stress and anxiety you feel because you don't have the money that your mind is longing, yearning for, right? You can eliminate that strong feelings that you're experiencing. That's getting to enlightenment. Elimination, that's enlightenment. That's what he's saying there. Then the way to do that, as he says, if he's firm in this, he attains the destruction of the taints. What the taints are, or the fetters, these are the 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. I share these in the foundational classes. There's 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered, and then he teaches you how to use various tools and techniques to eliminate them out of the mind. He referred to them as fetters or taints or defilements or pollutions. The word fetter is oftentimes used because during his lifetime, if you were a criminal and they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. What a fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball. And they would just keep you in a field, and that's how you would stay in a particular area, where today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they just put a fetter around your ankle and they would keep you in this particular field. And now this is how you would stay confined to that particular area. So when the Buddha discovered these pollutions, he called them fetters or taints or pollutions, because they're keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state where it's experiencing these strong feelings over and over and over again. So he's saying to attain this destruction of the taints, because when you eliminate these pollutions or these taints out of the mind, that's where the mind is now free. It's liberated. You'll experience the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mental state. He says, but if he does not attain the destruction of the taints because of the craving for the teachings, where someone can long and yearn and chase after enlightenment, that's possible too. Whereas if someone's chasing and wanting and longing, yearning for this enlightened mental state, they'll actually not experience it. But if you're all the way over here on the other side, where you could care less about what's going on in your life, not helping your mind to grow and learn and develop in life, you're not going to experience peace and joy there either. So you need to come to the middle where you're gradually working towards inner improvement and growth and development in your life. So the Buddha teaches you to do that without craving, desire, attachment. So ultimately he's talking about this rebirth into the heavenly world and actually experiencing enlightenment from there. The goal would be to get to enlightenment in this life, and you can actually see that that's occurring. But if for some reason you fall short of that, that's what the Buddha's talking about here, where somebody's eliminated 5 of the fetters and they haven't eliminated all 10. He's talking about rebirth into the heavenly realm and then getting to enlightenment there. And that's why this chapter is actually here, because this whole section of the book is about the heavenly realm and how beings actually get to the heavenly realm. Because the heavenly realm is not permanent. That's not what the Buddha is teaching you to do. He's not teaching you to believe a bunch of things and get to heaven, and now you have a permanent existence in heaven, because you can see that everything around you is impermanent. Heaven is not permanent. The realm of hell is not permanent. And there's no being that's sending you to these places. It's your own decisions that are leading to any particular result that you experience. So if you have certain pollutions in your mind at the time of death, then you'll be born into whatever realm is appropriate based on the level of pollution in the mind. But if you've completely purified your mind, you're experiencing peace and joy in this life, and you know that that's the case, because you'll go 1 year, 2 years, 3 years where you're not experiencing any anger, any sadness, any frustration. Even the slightest little bit of ickiness in the mind has been eliminated, and you'll find that the mind's very peaceful and very joyful, and your relationships are all harmonious. So you'll know that your mind is actually enlightened, and you'll know that you're not going to experience rebirth in any of these future existences, because there won't be any future existence within the cycle of rebirth. So the Buddha is explaining this rebirth into the heavenly realm and getting to enlightenment there. But that's not the ultimate goal. The goal would be to get to enlightenment in this life. Then he says, just as an archer or an archer's apprentice undergoes training on a straw man or a heap of clay, and then at a later time becomes a long-distance shooter, a sharpshooter, one who splits a great body. What he's talking about here is someone who's actually becoming an expert at shooting an arrow, right? Because people would have understood this back then, right? So what he's talking about is, for you to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to become an expert at training your mind, cultivating wisdom, and getting rid of these pollutions. And having done so, now your mind will be completely enlightened and experiencing that enlightened mental state. And then he goes on and talks about these other things, which is part of the discourse, but I won't go into those unless you guys have questions. So do you guys have any questions on this particular discourse or anything that I shared that you would like to ask questions about? No questions here? Okay. Let me see if we have anything online. Hello to everyone. Okay, I don't see any questions online. So let me share with you guys what this book has. This particular book, the way that it's structured is you have the words of the Buddha here. Then you have a reference here that takes you back to the original Pali Canon. That is a reference that shows you where this came from out of the 45 volumes of books, so that you'll know where this came from, and you can build confidence that what I'm sharing with you in this book series is the original words of the Buddha. Then you've got words from me that are helping you to be able to integrate this into your day-to-day life? Because the Buddha speaks very clear, very concise, and very precise. And for people who study his teachings, you'll be able to study them, and they're very straightforward. Again, this is a teaching that's much later in your development, so people wouldn't necessarily understand this right up front. But if you start with his beginning teachings and you gradually build, you'll be able to understand something like this. But here, I'm helping you to be able to understand how to integrate this into your day-to-day life, because it helps to have a dedicated practitioner and teacher to guide you on the path to enlightenment. You actually wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment by yourself without the help of any teachers or any guides. That's what a Buddha does. An individual who's a Buddha, they've gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people during their life, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. And this type of individual is very rare in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you're going to need teachers and guides to help you along the path in your journey to training your mind and purifying it of these fetters or these pollutions or these taints. So this is words from me to be able to help you. And then it just goes on for addressing the various things that are in that particular chapter. Okay, and then we come to chapter 92. Is there someone who would like to read this one? I think this one's about 2.25 pages, but it's spaced out pretty well. Is there anyone who would like to read that here or online? Tom? Yeah, sure, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Sure,
yes.
Kid.
The heavenly beings of the pure abodes. Once, monks, I was staying at Ukata in the Subaga Grove at the foot of a great sal tree, and as I resided there in seclusion, it occurred to me, there is no abode of beings easily accessible that has not been visited by me for so long as that of the heavenly beings of the pure abodes. Suppose I were to visit them now. And then, as swiftly as a strong man might stretch his flexed arm or flex it again, I vanished from Yukata and appeared among the Aviha heavenly beings. And many thousands of them came to me, saluted me, and stood to one side. Then they said, Sir, it is 91 eons since the Buddha Vipassana appeared in the world. And we, sir, who lived the holy life with guidance from the Buddha Vipassana, having freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here. And many thousands of them came to me, saluted me, and stood to one side. Then they said, Sir, it is 31 eons since the Buddha Sikhi appeared in the world, and we, sir, who lived the holy life with guidance from the Buddha Sikhi, having freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here. And many thousands of them came to me, saluted me, and stood to one side. Then they said, Sir, it is in the same 31st eon since the Buddha Visabu appeared in the world, and we, sir, who lived the holy life with guidance from the Buddha Visabu, having freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here. And many thousands of them came to me, saluted me, and stood to one side. Then they said, Sir, in this present fortunate eon since the Buddha Kakusanda appeared in the world, and we, sir, who lived the holy life with guidance from the Buddha Kakusanda, having freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here. And many thousands of them came to me, saluted me, and stood to one side. Then they said, Sir, in this present fortunate eon, since the Buddha Konakagamana appeared in the world, and we, sir, who lived the holy life with guidance from the Buddha Konagamana, have freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here, and many thousands of them came to me, saluted me, and stood to one side. Then they said, Sir, in this present fortunate eon, since the Buddha Kassapa appeared in the world, and we, sir, who live the holy life with guidance from the Buddha Kassapa, having freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here. And many thousands of them came to me, saluted me, and stood to one side. They said, Sir, in this fortunate eon now, the Buddha has arisen in the world. He was born of Katiya ethnic group and arose in a Katiya family. He is of the Gotama clan. And we, sir, who have lived the holy life under the Buddha, having freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here. Then I went with the Aviha heavenly beings to see the Atapa heavenly beings, and with these to see the Sudasa heavenly beings, and with these to see the Sudasi heavenly beings, and with all of these to see the Akantiha heavenly beings. And there many thousands of heavenly beings came, saluted me, and stood to one side, saying, Sir, it is 91 eons since the Buddha Vipassi appeared in the world. And so it is, monks, that by his penetration of the fundamentals of the teachings that the Tathagata remembers, the past Buddhas who have attained final nibbana, final enlightenment, cutting through multiplicity, blazing a trail, have exhausted the round, have passed by all discontentedness. He recalls their births, their names, their clan, their lifespan, their twin disciples, their assemblies of disciples. These fortunate Buddhas were born thus, were called thus. Thus was their clan, thus was their morality, their teachings, their wisdom, their residing thus was their liberation.
All right. Thank you, Tom. So this collection of teachings that we call the Pali Canon, this is the largest, most complete collection that we have of the teachings of the Buddha. Again, it's in 45 books that are about this thick. Now, there are certain teachings that we know that the Buddha shared during his lifetime, 2,500 years ago, that are not in that Pali Canon, because we see that there's certain teachings that are referenced, but they're not actually in the Pali Canon. And we also know that there's certain teachings in the Pali Canon that aren't actually what the Buddha really taught. Because of impermanence and constant change, it's impossible for a document to be created 2,500 years ago and for it to be exactly accurate as of what was taught 2,500 years ago. It's impossible because of impermanence. Now, the teachings that the Buddha shared 2,500 years ago that he spoke about, that's what leads to enlightenment, and he was describing the natural laws at that time. The natural laws that exist today, they're exactly the same natural laws. They actually haven't changed. So it's the books and the memories and what people are thinking about the teachings of the Buddha, that has all been affected by impermanence. But the natural laws themselves haven't actually changed. So in the Pali Canon, this is the only one conflict that I've actually ever found. In all the readings that I've done, all the exploration and examination and investigation of the teachings of the Buddha, I've only ever found this one conflict, which is this is a particular discourse, and there's others as well, where the Buddha is documented as having talked about previous Buddhas before him. But there's actual discourse in the Pali Canon where the Buddha is saying that he is the originator, the discoverer, the declarer of the path to enlightenment, undeclared before him, meaning that he's the first and only Buddha. The more that you understand about the path to enlightenment and you understand the level of intellectual understanding that the human mind needs in order to be able to practice the teachings and transform the mind to get to enlightenment, you will probably come to the conclusion, as I have, that the Buddha, Gotama Buddha, was the first and only Buddha. I don't think that this particular discourse is actually accurate. It could be, I don't know. I wasn't there when it was potentially talked about. But the level of intellectual understanding that's needed in order to be able to get to enlightenment, human beings in this particular time frame that we're now living in, we didn't have intellectual conversation prior to the historical Buddha, the Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha who we refer to as the Buddha or Gautama Buddha. That 2,500 years ago when he lived, 10,000 years, 20,000 years before him, we didn't actually have intellectual conversation. When human beings first came into this world, we were just moaning and grunting and making sounds. We weren't even able to communicate with each other so well. So it wasn't until about his time frame that we had developed intellectual thought and we were able to talk and speak in very deep ways to be able to actually understand the natural laws enough to be able to actually get to enlightenment. But nonetheless, I left this particular discourse in this book series because it helps students to be able to see this conflict, right? I would like students to be able to see the entire Pali Canon so that you can come to the conclusion that I have, which is the teachings of the Buddha absolutely lead to enlightenment. This mental state of enlightenment is absolutely attainable, but you need to be able to learn and understand the path to enlightenment and understand that all the things around you are affected by impermanence, including the Pali Canon. And the way that you cut through that impermanence so that you know what is true and what is false about the teachings of the Buddha is you learn, examine, investigate his teachings, not believing anything at all. Then you reflect on those teachings to independently verify, are they true or are they false? And then you practice the teachings to be able to train your mind, uproot these pollutions out of your mind. And as you're doing so, you'll see the peace and the joy coming into the mind more and more. And you'll see your personal and professional relationships really blossoming. And you'll know that the teachings that you're practicing are actually true. They're the actual true teachings of the Buddha. Whether there were Buddhas before the Buddha or not, it actually really doesn't matter, right? Because we have the teachings of the Buddha, Gautama Buddha. They lead to enlightenment. And whether there were Buddhas before him or not, it actually doesn't even matter. But it's something that you will see in the Pali Canon, and that's why I left it in the book series. And it will help you to understand that, this Pali Canon is not 100% permanent, that there's things that have been changed potentially. And you're going to need to be able to cut through that by not believing what you see, including the text that you see in the book. Don't believe any of these books that I share. Don't believe them. Learn, reflect, and practice to be able to see the truth for yourself. And that's what's important. So whether there were Buddhas before Gautama Buddha or not, I don't know. I wasn't there, right? But based on what I've seen and based on what I understand about the world and the evolution of human beings, I don't think that there could have been Buddhas before him, because the level of intellectual conversation that would be needed to be able to help people get to enlightenment didn't exist prior to the Buddha. So again, it doesn't really matter, but this is something that you guys can learn as part of your journey on the path to enlightenment. So do you guys have any questions about this particular chapter? Because what it's describing is the Buddha communicating with heavenly beings, which is possible. It is possible for that to occur. Even non-Buddhas, people who aren't Buddhas, can actually communicate with heavenly beings as well. Yes, amen.
Thank you, David. Yeah, just on that, if no one was able to set about and achieve what the Buddha taught, I wonder what it was about the Buddha that spark. What was it that happened there? Because I sometimes speak to people, and if they ask me what I'm doing at the weekend, I say I'm coming here. They have no kind of, like, why are you doing that? What's that? Why? I don't really know what to say. Mm. So what do you think? Is that a karmic kind of result? A wholesome karma that maybe this life, maybe I'm inquiring about something, or that my friends might not? I don't know.
The reason why somebody would be interested in getting to enlightenment is that they're done with the painful feelings. They're tired of being angry. They're frustrated. They're tired of broken relationships. They're tired of the stress and anxiety and the guilt and the shame and the fear, and they're looking to move beyond that. Essentially what the path to enlightenment is you're purifying the mind of these pollutions that are causing these feelings. And essentially what human beings are able to do is evolve to a better species. Just like a lizard or a snake can evolve to a better species, and species have been evolving all throughout history, human beings can evolve too. We have been evolving. Our language has been evolving. Our ability to clothe ourselves has been evolving. Our ability to provide food and shelter and medical care and things like this, we've been evolving as a species all these years. But the one thing that hasn't evolved is our human mind, is to be able to move from this point where we experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the point where human beings are completely peaceful and completely joyful, right? So that would be the reason why somebody would choose to be on the path to enlightenment, is that they're done with the painful feelings. They're tired of the broken relationships. They're tired of the stress and anxiety and the guilt and the shame and the fear. And they're looking to evolve as a person, doing this inner work. And most people in the world don't even realize this is a possibility. So that's why I start all of my classes, just giving you guys like a little bit of a snippet of what enlightenment is. That it's where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, where you've eliminated all those discontent feelings. Because most people don't even know what enlightenment is. They just kind of resign themselves to thinking that they're going to be angry and frustrated the rest of their life. And they're just completely fine with going through the world and blaming other people for the feelings that they're experiencing. But once you talk to somebody that understands this enlightened mental state and says, hey, you can opt out of these discontent feelings. You can opt out of stress and anxiety and, guilt and shame and fear, just like you opt out of a mailing list in your email and you're like, nope, not interested in receiving those emails anymore. And you can opt out, you can unsubscribe. It's the same thing. You can unsubscribe to the anger and the bitterness and the harshness and hostility that the mind has, but you need to know how to do that. And that's what the teachings of the Buddha are for. And you're going to encounter people that don't know that, because what they might have been exposed to is rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship and a lot of misunderstandings about the teachings of the Buddha. And therefore they're going to be confused. Like, what are you doing? Why are you going to the temple? Like, we've done those things. We've had the water sprinkled on us and we've had the strings tied on our wrist. That stuff doesn't work. Yeah, of course it doesn't work, because that's not the teachings of the Buddha, right? The Buddha didn't teach those things, but you'll see those things around. And that's a lot of times what people think the Buddha's teachings are, because they've been exposed to those rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and things like that. But what you're learning is not that. And their misperceptions of what the teachings of the Buddha are coming into play when they're looking at you and be like, why are you going to the temple? Like, why would you do that? So the way that I would help you to understand that is that you're looking to get to this peace and joy where the mind is completely peaceful and you're not experiencing those discontent feelings any longer. And there's other benefits too, like you've heard me share many times, where the mind's focused, concentrated, you have clarity of mind and deep memory because your mind's performing optimally. You don't have that pollution anymore. You'll see your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming because your mind's at ease and you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile anymore. So you don't have that in your relationships any longer. And you'll notice you're not even in a bad mood any longer because the causes and conditions that are producing that bad mood have been uprooted. And you'll notice that you're not even tired. You don't get exhausted. An unenlightened being will go out into the world craving, longing, yearning. And if you get everything you want that day, if things are going your way, you'll get to the end of your day, you're like, this was a great day. This was the best day ever because everything was going your way. Your cravings were getting fulfilled. But if you go out into your day and your cravings aren't getting fulfilled and you're experiencing painful feelings and frustration, you'll be like, this was such a hectic day. This was a horrible day. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have that. Every single day is a great day because you're not out there chasing longing, yearning, where the unenlightened being, having chased and chased and chased all day long, you'll get home and you'll be exhausted. You'll be completely tired and wiped out. But an enlightened being isn't doing that. They're just gradually pursuing their goals, objectives, or interests, walking through the world with the wisdom and a smile on their face. And now they get home at the end of their day and they still have energy. They still have joy. They still have peacefulness. They're not exhausted and tired. So this is what the Buddha described as a better way of life, right? This is the better way of life. He didn't say, I discovered a new religion. There's no religion here. It's not rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. It's training your mind to experience this better way of life. And most people don't understand that. And that's why you'll encounter people who will be confused of why you're doing what you're doing. But as long as you're clear, that's what's important. You need to be clear what you're doing. You don't need to convince other people that what you're doing is important and helpful. Okay, no other questions? Okay, I don't see any questions online either. All right, let's see. Maybe we'll do one more chapter. Let's see what else we have here. Oops, we don't need to read this chapter. We'll do it tonight. When I teach the class in the evening, I go through all 10 chapters. We don't need to read that chapter. I review these ahead of time. We don't need to read that chapter. Actually, I think, let me see how long this one is. Yeah, let's read this one. We'll finish with this one. Would someone like to read this one? Nobody? We get in class here too. Oh, Eamon, you'd like to read? Okay.
Four observable benefits for one who learned the teachings by ear. Monks, when one has learned the teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view, four benefits are to be observed. What four? Here, a monk masters the teachings, discourses, mixed prose and verse, expositions, verses, inspired spoken phrases, quotations, birth stories, amazing accounts, and questions and answers. He has learned those teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view. He passes away muddled in mind and is reborn into a certain group of heavenly beings. There the happy ones recite passages of the teachings to him. The arising of his memory is sluggish, but then that being quickly reaches distinction. This is the first benefit to be observed when one has learned the teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them all well by view. Again, a monk masters the teachings, discourses, mixed prose and verse, expositions, verse-inspired spoken phrases, quotations, birth stories, amazing accounts, and questions and answers. He has practiced those teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view. He passes away muddled in mind and is reborn into a certain group of heavenly beings. There, the happy ones do not recite passages of the teachings to him, but a monk with psychic potency who has attained mastery of mind teaches the teachings to an assembly of heavenly beings. It occurs to him, this is the teachings and discipline in which I formerly lived the spiritual life. The arising of his memory is sluggish, but then that being quickly reaches distinction. Suppose a man was skilled in the sound of a kettle drum. While travelling along a highway, he might hear the sound of a kettle drum and would not be at all confused or uncertain about the sound. Rather, he would conclude, that is the sound of a kettle drum. So too, a monk masters the teachings. The arising of his memory is sluggish, but then that being quickly reaches distinction. This is the second benefit to be observed when one has followed the teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view. Again, a monk masters the teachings, discourses, mixed prose and verse, expositions, verses, inspired spoken phrases, quotations, birth stories, amazing accounts, and questions and answers. He has learned those teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view. He passes away muddled in mind and is reborn into a certain group of heavenly beings. There the happy ones do not recite passages of the teachings to him, nor does a monk with psychic potency who has attained mastery of the mind teach the teachings to an assembly of heavenly beings. However, a young heavenly being teaches the teachings to an assembly of heavenly beings. It occurs to him, these are the teachings and discipline in which I formerly lived the spiritual life. The arising of his memory is sluggish, but then that being quickly reaches distinction. Suppose a man was skilled in the sound of a conch. While travelling along a highway, he might hear the sound of a conch, and he would not be at all confused or uncertain about the sound. Rather, he would conclude, that is the sound of a conch. So too, a monk masters the teachings. The arising of his memory is sluggish, but then that being quickly reaches distinction. This is the third benefit to be observed when one has learned the teaching by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view. Again, a monk masters the teachings, discourses, mixed prose and verse, expositions, verses, inspired spoken phrases, quotations, birth stories, amazing accounts, and questions and answers. He has practiced those teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view. He passes away muddled in mind and is reborn into a certain group of heavenly beings. There the happy ones do not recite passages of the teachings to him, nor does a monk with psychic potency who has attained mastery of mind teach the teachings to an assembly of heavenly beings, nor does a young heavenly being teach the teachings to an assembly of heavenly beings. However, one being who has been spontaneously reborn reminds another who has been spontaneously reborn. Do you remember, dear sir, do you remember where we formerly lived the spiritual life? The other says, I remember, dear sir, I remember the arising of this memory is sluggish, but then that being quickly reaches distinction. Suppose there were two friends who had played together in the mud. By chance they would meet one another later in life. Then one friend would say to the other, do you remember this friend? Do you remember that friend? The other would say, I remember, friend. I remember. So too a monk masters the teachings. The arising of his memory is sluggish, but then that being quickly reaches distinction. This is the fourth benefit to be observed when one has learned the teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view. These are the four benefits to be observed when one has learned the teachings by ear, recited them verbally, examined them with the mind, and penetrated them well by view.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what the Buddha is talking about here is that if you've learned and studied the teachings and you've trained your mind to a certain degree, but you haven't yet got to enlightenment, when you die, you're going to experience rebirth, but in that next birth, you'll have some memories of the teachings that you studied in your previous life. This is how some beings make their way back to the teachings very early in their next life, perhaps. So here he's talking about the heavenly realm, but this can actually happen in the human realm too. Let's just say that you were in the human realm in the past, you were studying the teachings of the Buddha, you made your way to a certain point of development, and then you never got to enlightenment in that life, but you died. When you die, the residual memories from your previous life, not only about studying the teachings, but other residual memories as well, they move forward into this new mind that is created. And this is how people actually observe their past lives, and they know that their past lives existed because they have memories of those past lives in their current life. And you can also have memories of the teachings of the Buddha. So if you study the teachings of the Buddha and you're learning them, examining them, you're like, wow, this seems so familiar. This seems so straightforward. This can be because you've studied them in your past life. But if you're studying the teachings of the Buddha and you're like, wow, this is really cumbersome. This is really challenging to understand. This is potentially because you haven't studied the teachings of the Buddha in a previous life. And that's okay. If you're in this life and you're studying the teachings of the Buddha, you'll see that they actually will work to improve the condition of your mind in your life as you're gradually developing your mind. So here he's just kind of helping you to be able to see that one of the benefits of learning and practicing in this life is that if you don't get to enlightenment for whatever reason, whatever work you do in this life, it's going to help you in your future life. So not everything's lost just because you don't get to enlightenment in this life. So some of you guys may have actually studied the teachings of the Buddha in your previous life. Maybe some of you haven't. Either way, you're able to study them now in this life, and that's what's going to help you and benefit you. So any questions on this particular chapter? The Buddha is talking essentially about residual memories from previous lives. No questions? Okay, let me see if we have anything online here. Okay. I don't see anything online. So what I'm going to do is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest in learning the teachings of the Buddha, because as you learn and practice the teachings, it's going to help you to improve, become a better and better individual. And this is going to help you. It's going to help those around you because you're not causing any harm. And then it's helping all of humanity become a more peaceful and loving society. So thank you for being able to be dedicated in doing that. We can talk after class. So I have other classes and other ways for you guys to learn. This may or may not be the right environment for you. As you see, we do this as a study group, where the other programs and things that I study or that I teach is more like a traditional style of learning, where I will teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I'll open up for questions. I'll teach for another 15, 20, 30 minutes and open up for questions. So tomorrow's group learning program, you'll see me doing that. And then tomorrow we also have a retreat that's starting. It's a retreat that I only teach once a year, that it's going to start at 3 p.m. tomorrow, and it's going to go until 5 p.m. tomorrow. But then Monday through Friday next week, it's going to go from 9 a.m. to 12:30. Then we're going to go do excursions during the daytime if people would like to go, or you can just have free time. And then from 6:30 p.m. until 8:30 p.m., I'm going to be teaching again here in the evening at the temple. So if you'd like to come for the entire retreat, you're more than welcome to. If you're here tomorrow at 3 o'clock, you'll be able to start the retreat and be able to go forward from there. You can see the details on our website. But also you can come and go in and out of this retreat as you like. So some people, they might be working and they only can come to the evening sessions. You can do it that way. Or if you only come to the morning sessions, you can do it that way. On Monday evening, I'm going to be teaching the core central teaching of the Buddha, which is called the Eightfold Path. That's where people usually start with the teaching. So in the morning on Monday from 9 to 12:30, I'm going to be teaching some beginning teachings, as well as tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So you're welcome to come to this retreat. You can find the details on our website, or you can come talk to me and I'll help you understand more about this retreat. And you'll be able to attend if you'd like, for any part of that you'd like. It's about this retreat. It's all about helping you to understand how to purify the mind of these 10 fetters that I mentioned in part of our class today. We're going to spend about an hour to an hour and a half talking about each individual fetter, what it is, what the symptoms of it are, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it once it's been eliminated from the mind. So you're welcome to come to any of those that you like. And you'll find that I live stream these classes, so you can attend by live stream any of our regular classes or our courses and retreats. You can attend here at the temple, or you can attend through our live stream in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. And if you can't attend the live classes, they're all recorded, so you can actually watch through the recording and learn through the recording. So if you would like to learn how to get to the peace and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, there's help for you here. And all the resources are available for you at no cost. The books, the audiobooks, the videos, the podcasts, the classes, courses, retreats, personal guidance, me sitting down with you one-on-one, helping you to be able to learn these teachings, all of it's available for you. So if you'd like help, all you need to do is find out how to get plugged into the resources and the classes and programs that you need to really get started. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee ka. Sawadee ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.